But anyway, we move on now to the main event of the evening that everybody was talking about. That Brian, I don't know if we called this specifically with Tony and AEW. We've talked about the subject. We talked about it with Dixie Carter and TNA, and this is not a urban legend. It's a rule of thumb practically in the wrestling business down through history, and small companies and large, and in outlaw situations all across the width and breadth of the great country of ours. If you found a fucking angel, a backer, a money mark, an investor, whatever term that you wanted to use, that was not motivated by business, but more of the love of the game and or being involved in it, and or some of the people that might be involved in it. When they start losing patience or things look bad, come up with an angle to put them on TV. Has this not happened umpteen times over the years?
Well, I'll say two things. One, sadly, my first thought as this was happening was Dixie Carter. Fair or not, that was my thought. Secondly, I called this a few years ago. Tony's going to make himself an on-air character. That's what he really wants. I also said he'll end up sleeping with talent, but we'll see.
Now, I see. I couldn't take that leap with you. I was with everything else. I couldn't take that leap.
But he made himself an on-air character. That is what he has wanted to do, and they're trying to do it to launch this. You know, when the NWO happened, Hall and Nash were pretty big. I mean, they were big names, even without having to use their names. It changed business right away when they arrived. And then they added Hogan, an established name whose turn was a massive deal.
And then they added Bischoff when Vince got over as a heel.
And Bischoff wanted to be on TV more as a character and have fun with his friends or the guys he wanted to hang out with.
And he's very good at it. We can't say he's not.
Bischoff is an exceptional on-air performer, I think. But the point is, you can't even compare this to Bischoff. Bischoff was aligned with a stable that was over.
But that's what I'm saying. We don't have Kevin Nash. We don't have Scott Hall. We don't have Eric Bischoff. We don't have Hulk Hogan. We got Tony Khan, the Buckaroos, O'Cody, and Jungle Jackoff. And remember what I said at the top about this was the worst time to present an amateur production of whether it be the amateur booking or amateur talent or amateur production, whatever. But can you imagine Tony Schiavone standing there in the ring, introduces the man of the hour, old Jungle Jack, and all 800 fans in the crowd sing "Cry Me a River" because he's the hometown fans. But he calls out Tony Khan and Tony wanders out. Can you imagine? Again, I know this is pie in the sky dreaming, but if they had the average viewer, the average fan, somebody that might want to bump these numbers up any at all from where they've been forever. They're used to seeing Vince McMahon or Eric Bischoff or Triple H. Here comes the guy that runs the thing. And then here comes Rick Moranis' stunt double. And they're saying, this is the guy that runs the thing?
That's not fair. He looked like Rick Moranis' stunt double when he still had his glasses and he was still getting haircuts and he was still trying to look neat and proper. When he got involved with the wrestling project, all of a sudden, once things got going and he was on the road all the time with the wrestlers, the hair started growing. He doesn't shave. He looked unkempt. His hair was a mess. He had no presence. Yeah.
Is he smiling or grimacing, or is he constipated?
All of that. And more.
He's uneasy. He's got irritable bowels. He looks like his skin is literally crawling. And Jungle Jack, then, once he gets Tony in the ring after he's called him out, he turns his back on Tony and starts telling his story to the handheld camera. And then it's more shit about how they've changed the world. They've changed the world. Yes, it used to not have a bad wrestling program on it. And
But it looks
so,
at him, Steve Simpson and Sean Simpson changed the world.
yeah, except no, the Simpson boys were significantly taller
Okay.
than Jungle Boy.
Fair enough.
And then he's giving Tony the babyface speech, and he swears to Tony that the only thing that he's ever wanted is what's best for AEW. And Tony, it claps then. He's clapping and he looks touched. And can you see even if they're supposed to be keeping tension and storyline only and they're all best friends, can you see a similar situation where a top guy that has just interfered and cost the World Tag Team title to go to the fucking heels, and the company head, whether it be the Bischoff or the Vince or the Triple H or whatever, or the Nick Aldis or Adam Pearce, having a goddamn confrontation, and when the fucking guy who healed is pitching his case, the authority figure is applauding what he says and clapping for him and smiling.
You know what? I've always had a problem with you calling Kenny Omega Harpo, because I love the Marx Brothers. I know their work really well. And that's why I think I could say this was a Harpo Marx performance. He said nothing. He reacted with his face, his eyebrows, his hands. All he needed was a horn. But he's out there. He's just like, he's a character. When you watch him, he's just constantly in motion and twitching and moving and reacting in both positive and negative ways to the same thing being said, because his head is constantly going. And I guess we're going to be seeing more of this.
Well, then finally, and old Jack says, please shake my hand and reinstate me so we can change the world together. And Tony smiles and nods and gives the fans the thumbs up and shakes Jungle Boy's hand and gives him the Tony Khan hug. And that's when old Jack opens his eyes and smiles ominously at the camera, like I've suckered him. And then Jack raises Tony's hand and lets him get some cheers from the crowd, and then turns around. And with the hand he's got the microphone in, so it would have made some noise if it actually had worked, I guess. But he gives him a gut shot, a punch to the stomach, whereupon Tony takes 1 second to react at all and then takes a flat back bump. And somebody on Twitter said, well, here's what happened. Tony's head was so far up his own ass that the punch to the gut knocked him out. And that's what it looked like.
He took a flat back bump. He landed, knocked out, and then all of a sudden he woke up and grabbed his stomach and rolled over.
Yes. And then exposed his ass to the world. And then as he's laying there, then here comes the Buckaroos and O'Cody acting like, oh, what the fuck has happened here? What have you done? And they're telling Jack, get back, stay away from him. And they help Tony up. And of course, they tease. When Maddie and Nikki help him up, they tease giving him their shitty little double knee lift, but they help him up to his feet. And then Matt scoops him up like a sack of flour, and they give him safest ever Meltzer driver. Olaf, the one brother that does the flip, what's his name? Nicky. His ass takes some punishment on that move, but Maddie dropped Tony. His head wasn't 6 inches from the ring. But then they dropped him, and they all stood up and stood there and glorified while the referees checked on Tony. And the announcers were laying out like it'd just been the Kennedy assassination. Either that or their microphones had completely gone out. We don't know. And then once the heels wander around and then leave, as soon as they've gone through the entranceway, through the same entranceway, 5 seconds later comes every fucking job guy and underneath wrestler on the fucking card, followed by Shad Khan himself, who I saw on again on Twitter. Somebody had a nice fucking picture of him looking all concerned, but the caption was, "Give him another one. Where's my money? Fuck the game
Where's
changers.
my money? Where's
Put
my
it into
money,
this.
Tony?
But so then, and I'll let you begin commenting, but then they were off the air, by the way, exactly at 10 o'clock because they had some kind of important game this week and couldn't futz with their numbers. But after the thing went off the air, there's footage on Twitter that a couple of stagehand looking guys helped Tony up to his feet and throw one arm over each of their shoulders, and Tony shuffles out under his own power after taking the dreaded gut punch from Ox Baker Perry and the Meltzer driver from the fucking Buckaroos, and they can't even pop for a stretcher for him. Your thoughts?
I didn't see any of that post-match stuff, so I can't comment on it. But again, Tony's out there. He just doesn't have any presence on camera. The other thing is, we know who Tony is. And Tony's been shown just a tiny little bit lately with some of these elite segments. And he's made announcements in the past. But Tony's not really like someone the audience is invested. I shouldn't say that.
For the people watching this show, they know who Tony is and they like him. For the people watching religiously. But again, they're narrow casting for anybody they might get besides the people they already got. They're the ones saying this fucking weasel is running this thing and these children are dropping him on his head. What the fuck is going on here?
And when you see Tony in there with them, Okada has some size. Tony was just as big as Jack Perry and the Bucks, and they all look ridiculous. That's the thing. The NWO looked like badasses, looked like
intimidating.
Adults. Even DX in their own way. But the Bucks and Jack Perry, it's like the two guys that Punk kicked the shit out of and the guy that Punk was about to kick the shit out of. And Okada. And Okada's like a sore thumb.
He didn't have the chance to kick the shit out of him.
And Okada's like he's like Lurch behind them. Because what's his role? His role is, you're in the role of what Cody would have been. What is this role that he has with the Elite?
The role is he rolls up to the bank every week for almost nothing. That's what his role is.
Tony's made limited appearances. Shad Khan's never made an appearance. Or if he has, it's nothing of note and nothing recent. So the big thing at the end where he shows up, the fans aren't even going to really know what that is.
Well, he was only on the air for 15 seconds maybe or whatever anyway.
And we called that. And by the way, we said he was going to come back and then he was going to form his stable of constables.
And who is going to be the first constable that he ought to call the cops and say, my son has embezzled $150 million from me. But that's...
Why wouldn't the first thing be, okay, fire them? Thanks, guys. I just want to say, I've never felt my life was in more danger, except one other time. But this time it was much more... Actually, I got hurt.
Yeah. Well,
they fired Punk for making him feel like this for pushing a monitor or whatever. What about the Bucks and Jack Perry?
Well, yes. And I mean, even in a working way, would you be more trepidatious about your future when a guy's fucking yelling at you that he quits because the place is a fucking joke, or when some fucking guy the same size as you that might or might not be able to fucking hold you in the right place is fucking picking you upside down and going to drop you on your head? I think I'd be more nervous in that position.
If Tony Khan was going to do something physical on this show, and I think it was always an inevitable thing. Again, it's for Jack Perry and the Young Bucks. Young Bucks are dead on arrival right now, and they're trying everything they can. Jack Perry, let's see how long it lasts. Again, he's a tiny guy. And they're going to be the badass heel faction in a company filled with heel factions?
Well, but besides that, like you said, it was going to happen eventually because this is Tony's dream. It's another part of his dream. Now, I might actually get to take a bump in the ring and the fans will be worried about me. Wow, that'll be cool. And it'll all be part of this big angle. This isn't Bill Watts coming out of retirement for the last Stampede. I'm sorry to tell you. Theoretically, this should have been a fucking major moment, and it would have been if they'd have built something and then used talent properly in fucking putting their hands on a goddamn owner of the company. But instead, it's with these fucking children that nobody cares about to begin with. It was executed in such a rotten way because Tony can't do anything physical. And nobody gives a shit. Except the reason why this was such a hot topic and everybody was talking about it is because it looks so desperate now. And everybody was making fun of it. And everybody was like, what the fuck is going on here? I don't know if that's good publicity for of the pulling the trigger on theoretically the biggest angle that you could fucking do. Laying out the boss.
And now someone has to get even on behalf of the boss. And you can't just fire the heels because then no one can get even, I guess. And who could beat up the Young Bucks and Jack Perry there? I have no idea. If they drag FTR back into this, I don't think it works.
How many more times do they have to be beaten? You know, at this point, just wipe your feet on them and be done with it.
And that's the other thing. Are we going to get a running, like Mr. McMahon type thing where it's Tony all over the show now? And this is the beginning of that? Or is this just, let's use me as a thing to hopefully get people talking?
Well, I mean, obviously, he doesn't need to do anything physical.
And by the way, and let me just bring up to you, because I don't know if you'd be aware of this, the NFL draft is today as we are recording. And NFL Films, I believe, announced they were doing a documentary. They were following Tony Khan.
Okay.
With a camera.
Okay, well, that's perfect. That's why they did. It's not about fucking business. It's about, well, this is perfect timing for Tony to be able to take a big old wrestling move from his action figures, and it can be captured on NFL Films documentary fucking footage. Well, there you go. Whether it was his idea or whether they put him up to it, they know that it has warmed Tony's cockles to be able to do this at this time. But is he supposed to go to the NFL draft?
I don't know if he goes there or if they sit in the conference room and just call it in.
Well, if he's going to be being documented by the documentary people, shouldn't he have some kind of goddamn overnight hospital stay? Shouldn't he have had a neck brace on? Shouldn't he be... Hey, I did the neck brace thing on fucking Regis and Kathy Lee. The least he can do is for the NFL draft. There's probably fewer people watching that now than Regis and Kathy Lee from 30 years ago.
I'm on the Jacksonville Jaguars website, which is an official NFL website. They control all the websites for the teams.
Oh, I thought you meant the NFL now was in control of all the websites already. I was going to check mine.
This is by Grant Gordon. Jaguars Tony Khan takes punch and pile driver on AEW Dynamite show. Tony Khan's status for the Jacksonville Jaguars 2024 NFL draft obligations could be questionable. Khan, the Jags' chief football strategy officer and the founder, owner, and booker of All Elite Wrestling, took a punch to the gut and a Meltzer driver, pile driver, Wednesday Night Live on AEW Dynamite from Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida. Shad Khan, Tony's father, and owner of the Jaguars, took to the ring to check on his son in the aftermath of the drama. It's all part of an angle, professional wrestling storyline, of course, but it was shocking nonetheless, as Tony Khan has never been physically involved in AEW to that extent, and his father's appearance added more realism to the stunning end of the show.
It would have been hard to take any realism away.
Many people who know Tony Khan said it's not surprising to hear that Tony did a few bumps. He's been known to do bumps.
Wait, oh, back up.
I'm making that up. I'm making that one up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All in the name of fun, ladies and gentlemen.
Took a few bumps.
Maybe. It began with the returning Jack Perry, son of the late actor Luke Perry, and Tony Khan in the ring together, mending fences after Perry's very real suspension had been lifted. Perry had made his AEW return this past weekend after he had been absent following a legitimate backstage altercation with wrestler CM Punk
where he got goozled.
which led to the latter's dismissal from the company. Blurring the lines between storyline and reality once again on Wednesday, Perry's embrace with Khan was all for show, as he delivered a punch with a microphone to Khan's breadbasket, felling his boss in the process. It's written like it's in PWI in 1975. Thereafter, the Young Bucks tag team, brothers Matt and Nick, who are executive vice presidents within the company along with being on-screen talent, and top single star Kazuchika Okada, entered the fray and scolded Perry. Once more, it was only a ruse, as Matt scooped up Khan and held him in position for younger sibling Nick to take to the top rope, fly off into a front flip, and come down to spike the helpless Khan.
The helpless Khan.
As could be expected, Khan was protected well in the maneuver by the Bucks, revered workers within the business for nearly 2 decades.
Yeah, protected well. My Aunt Lola could have taken that bump.
What unfolds next could come Saturday on AEW's weekly Collision and Rampage offerings. That's also day 3 of the NFL Draft, which kicks off Thursday from Detroit with round 1. The Jaguars currently hold the number 17 overall pick. Whether head coach Doug Peterson and general manager Trent Balk, if that is indeed his name, can count on Tony Khan recovering from the heinous attack by Perry and the Young Bucks on Wednesday in Duval remains to be seen. So they're now doing that.
What is Tony's title there in the football team? He's the chief
strategy officer.
Strategy. So does he come up with like goddamn okay on 2, forward pass, drop back and punt, whatever? I thought that was the coach's job. What strategies is he implementing?
You know, it's like when people hire their daughters and make them chief marketing officer or something.
Well, I'm
chief brand officer.
I'm just trying to ask a simple question. I wonder what strategies that Tony is coming up with that he's passing on to the football team.
And when all of his great strategies are obviously going to wrestling. But that's how it's been covered by the NFL. The big news, he's taken a punch and a pile driver from the dastardly heels.
A punch and a pile driver. Punch and pie. Punch and pie.
The question's going to be, and we're going to travel through time momentarily, Jim, the question's going to be the ratings because, again, if you tuned in wanting to see what was going to happen, not knowing anything, the audio was really bad. If you stayed through that, there were things that were on the screen that you may not have been able to hear, like Kenny Omega returning. But the Bucks thing was announced an hour before it happened, or the Bucks and Jack Perry, Tony Khan thing. So we don't know how many people would have been driven to the show. Now, again, they had a hard out because of the NFL, not the NFL, the NHL, hockey. So you got to think people were ready. Whoever wanted to see that game may have been sitting there ready. The question's going to be how they did in that last quarter, which is traditionally the worst quarter of every show.
Well, at least they finished on time. But that's the problem is that I think now, you know, they've figured, okay, Tony will have more faith in this if he's in it, or if it's, you know, he had a part in it and we know he wants to take a bump. And that because nobody can possibly have thought that this would be good with the people involved and the way that it was executed. It's just purposely to give Tony another thrill and get these guys more indemnity to continue not to produce any kind of numbers. Well, Tony can't cut us. He's in the thing. He was part of it.
What do you think will be next? Do you think they're going to talk him into the ring? Come on, Tony, you got to do it. Come on, Tony. Only you could do it. Come on, you have to.
I don't think that's going to happen until after the next rights deal goes down. Then, if it doesn't go the way that it's supposed to go, we might see Tony Khan as an active wrestler.
They have a new world champion. Is anyone talking about that at all?
No. Why the fuck would they talk about that?
Well, we will see what happens, and I guess more than anything, we'll see how much this overwhelms the show, and we'll see what the audience reaction is.